There'll never be no comparison. You're live on the show. Sit back and have a listen.
That back, it all took place in Thailand, and they flew directly into Vegas. But and at that time, still relatively, all this was fairly new. Not new as far as MMA or fighting, but it's just since that time, Valentina had time to do some development, or not development, but let's say sharpening some of her old skills that she already had.
Okay, so now, and I'm kind of going back here a little bit, Roger, because you said something earlier in this interview, this podcast, man. You said something earlier. Okay, Valentina has over, somewhere near 500 fights, and most of those are Muay Thai. And so this kind of debunks the notion that Muay Thai fighters don't practice MMA, because you kind of went into it, because there's a lot of myths that Muay Thai fighters, they do just only stand up. I mean, could you kind of elaborate on that some more?
Well, if you really take Muay Thai, and her fights that she had, they're mixed. I mean, she's competed in all type of combat arts, not just Muay Thai, but specifically with Muay Thai, what you mentioned. There's different flavors of Muay Thai throughout the world, and there's also different flavors at different levels of Muay Thai throughout the world. And I'll give you an example. In Thailand, pretty much there's a very much a philosophy or emphasis on the clinch, and again, it depends on how, I guess, your background in Muay Thai, but they actually, the higher level instructors, whether they communicate it or not, they typically break the clinch down into a couple different elements. One is your traditional clinch with sweeps, with knees, with throws, and the other, they actually have a term for it, and they call it neck wrestling. And so really they practice pretty brutally intensively. They practice wrestling, not your traditional double legs or freestyle wrestling or anything like that, but in the clinch their philosophy is such. Now, and again, I reserve the right to be wrong on this, but this is just my opinion. And then you have your kind of your philosophy of what Muay Thai is in Europe, and in the bulk of your fighting in Europe is kickboxing and K1. So most of your Muay Thai fighters out of Europe, unless they're involved in one of these teams that are specifically geared to compete in, like IFMA, a lot of the pro fighters, their background is primarily in K1, which you'll see that they don't kind of embrace the true nature of the wrestling aspect or the grappling aspect of Muay Thai. I mean, when they go into clinch, I mean, it's common to call it the grapple. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, because I think some of the fans or some of the people who actually watch the sport, and they could be casuals. A lot of people had a misconception that these Muay Thai fighters they don't practice MMA, when in fact many of which do. And I did an interview with David Thunder Cummins. He's MMA legend, and he trains Angela Whitley, and he was telling me that a part of his training, they have to work on ground game. They have to work on the ground game. So I
well, most Muay Thai fighters, they don't really work on the ground. I mean, that's because once it hits the ground, I mean, there's takedowns and there's sweeps, but once it hits the ground, the fight's reset. So, that's Muay Thai is essentially, the MMA aspect of everything. But once it hits the ground, it resets and starts over, obviously. But there is a philosophy of wrestling. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that through his career, I'm sure he wrestled quite a bit.
Yeah, and that is true. That's true, because he was telling me about his background in wrestling and his all his other martial arts backgrounds and that stuff. Okay, now this you came up behind an interesting fact that So these girls, they didn't have to pay for their training. You know, like here in America, you wanna get martial arts training. Hey, it's gonna cost you. But
Sure.
over in her country, they don't charge and they get quality training. I mean, is it almost like a government thing there?
Well, it's not almost. I mean, it is, and
Huh.
the reason being is these most of these, uh, from the Ministry of Sports, and they fund all of it's taken of as a part of their culture, and part of that goes with sports, along with Olympic competition. Again, here we have our Olympic Committee, but there is no Ministry of Sports in the United States. I mean, when I told this to Valentina and Antonina, they really thought I was telling them a joke. They said, "You mean the U.S. doesn't, the United States doesn't, give money to their athletes?" I said, "No, it's the Olympic Committee, so they have to be an Olympic sport." And the concept was really, really foreign to them. They didn't understand. They just, they really didn't understand it, because like our Muay Thai athletes here. There's a gentleman here in Houston. His name's Michael Corley. He lived in Thailand. He's fought in Thailand. He's competed for our U.S. team. He actually organized in the last year a real U.S. federation for Muay Thai that's recognized by IFMA. And just here recently, and IFMA is the International Muay Thai Amateur Federation worldwide that's recognized by the body. They were just recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So probably in the next, hopefully, 8 years, Muay Thai will be in the Olympics. So when people hear about IFMA or Muay Thai, or they see these amateur fights, these are Olympic caliber athletes. These countries throughout the world, there's several in South America. They're all over Europe. They treat this as an Olympic sport. The U.S. is far behind, and so we're playing a lot of catch up. And the great thing is we have some. Michael has a they have a board that's scattered throughout the U.S. now, and they're really trying to get the train on the tracks to get our athletes here in the U.S. Competitive throughout the world, because right now they're not with Muay Thai.
Well, I mean, Roger, I tell you what, man. I think Lion Fight, though. I think the job that they're doing, they're bringing some attention to Muay Thai, within the United States. I think the job they're doing, I think they're doing a phenomenal job with Lion Fight, and the matchups are very intriguing. And the fights, all the fights, man. I mean, you're getting some good quality fights. I mean, so could you talk about maybe your experience with the folks at Lion Fight?
Yes, when Valentina and Antonina both come to the States, we were searching out fights for both of them. And so when we were looking for Antonina, we looked at several organizations. We got her some fights over with Infusion, and then she competed in their reality show over in Thailand, and she won their women's tournament over there. And then when she was here in the States, we were looking, she was possibly going to fight for Legacy Kickboxing, but they were having trouble finding opponents for Valentina and for her, so it made it difficult with two athletes. So we looked into boxing, and then we touched several organizations, and one while we were in Las Vegas, we had already been talking to Lion Fights for a while, and we met. We had a face-to-face. We met, and they signed her, and they've done an incredible job. They've really been good to us, to our team, to Antonina, and she gets to shine. I mean, she is really she's an incredible athlete, incredible person, really, really a good role model for young athletes, and she's humble, and she's really, really skilled. She is really good. She's again, they won't say much. In my opinion, I think she's the best striker outside the UFC, and she's an incredible athlete.
I've always said it. I've been saying this. I've been saying this for the last 6 months and 22 days. I've been saying this, and I've been trying to tell people, if that young woman ever did mixed martial arts, she'd be a world champion. Cause she good, you know, she good. I mean, down to the counter punching. I mean, down to just, she can switch it up to southpaw, and Antonina's left hand. Good grief, man, that's a work of art. Gosh, she got a beautiful left hand.
Her last two opponents that she's faced, they're very, very good fighters.
Yeah.
No taking nothing away from them. Seeing what you see on TV doesn't always tell the story. It's easy to look, and I'll go back and I'll go back to Valentina as it's applicable to her fight, like with Holly as well. It's easy when you're watching from TV to look and say, oh, well, you should have did this, or oh, you didn't do this, or oh, you've got to do this. And the same applies to the corners. The corners are saying, you've got to step in an inch closer. You've got to go. You've got to throw. But, Valentina and Antonina are both very, very stylistically difficult to deal with because, they can fight multiple rhythms, multiple ranges, multiple, counters. I mean, they're not operating with a plan A, B, C. They've got the whole alphabet. And if they run out of the alphabet, they've got the numbers. And if the numbers run out, they've got, the multiplier in there. And if that's not enough, they've got, they've got the exponential aspect of it. I mean, they really are very skilled. And so, even the corners, they don't necessarily recognize. The athletes do. You see it by their reactions. They're like, whoa, they hit a little harder than I thought they did. Whoa, they're a little quicker than I thought they were. Ooh, they manage range a little better than I thought they did. Wow, their footwork works a little better than I thought it was. And so, really, I think that's what you're seeing in these fights. It kind of annoys me. I hear people, ragging on Holly with her fight against Valentina. I mean, I'm a Holly Holm fan. Holly Holm's a world-class athlete. She just fought another world-class athlete, and we had a result. But it's really something that just I don't care about. I think these women have a hard enough struggle to get up to the top, and to jump on and start trying to tear them down as athletes, I think is very, very disrespectful. I mean, you don't have to like all the athletes, but the ones that are good, the good guys, I think you got to support them, and you just don't throw them under the bus. But again, that's me as kind of a fan and someone that respects what these athletes have accomplished.
Yeah, and I have to be honest. I made some videos about Holly, and I actually, I made a video saying that she's not a bum just because she lost to Miesha Tate, who's world class athlete, and she lost to Valentina, world class athlete. These are all world class athletes with a lot of fights between both of the ladies. I mean, so you're losing to some experience, but some people throwing them under the bus. And I'll be honest too, I've been guilty because Valentina has a fight coming up with Juliana Pena, and I've actually said, hey, I've actually taken a lot of criticism for even criticizing Juliana, and I've done that, and I don't mean to, because on this platform I actually like to promote the women a little bit more than I would the men, since the men they're always talked about. And I see where you're coming from. It does make sense, and it's
well, again, every team has a different flavor.
Yeah.
We've competed against the Jackson team, Winklejohn team 2 times, and they've been gracious and respectful. We were the same. I mean, it's kind of in our culture. Not all teams have that culture. Not all fighters have that culture. Some of the fighters, they feel it's necessary to go and talk, but there's a difference. I think you're going to see the the kind of wannabe Conor McGregors that are out in the world now. They can talk, they can't back it up, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think when you really peel away the onion, I think at the end of the day, Conor always gives his respect to his opponents. Typically, most of the time, he talks a lot of trash, and and even I know you're not a Ronda fan, but she's
No.
of course if you filter out some of the noise, she really doesn't talk a whole lot of. She doesn't talk mad trash. She has when people talked on her, but again we may have a different view about that. But she typically at the end of the day she usually gives her opponents their respect, other than shaking Misha's hand, which I think that was a mistake.
Yeah,
she didn't do that.
She didn't shake Misha's hand. She she gave Misha take the bird. She picked on a ring girl. Yeah,
yeah. Now that kind of stuff, I don't condone that kind of stuff. So, to me, all that's theater, and that doesn't have anything to do with the fight. And if a person chooses to do that, then that's up to them.
Hey, said a couple other things. Said Mayweather couldn't read it. Man, I got a list of stuff.
Hey, I don't keep up with that kind of stuff. So I'd be honest with you, I don't. So that's what you do. So I defer to you.
Oh, man.
For me to come up here and say, Valentina's going to go beat Mayweather and Antonina knock him out too, that'd be silly for me to even talk about that.
Yeah, man.
I've been around boxing, so I know I know the kind of the importance of the gamesmanship and the showmanship, but there's a line that you draw when you talk about a world-class woman fighter fighting against a world-class man fighter. I think no matter the politics or someone's kind of delusion about it, you have to be real, and it's not even given either athlete their due